everybody. Let's get into this latest episode of Game of Thrones. So, this episode starts with a huge surprise for me now. The Hound is alive. Can y'all believe it? Oh my goodness, when Arya left him for dead, um, a part of me just felt like he died. She wasn't going to be the one to end his life and make it quick or whatever. She just left him there to die because, she had a love hate relationship for him. So, in my mind, I just figured he was dead. But now, y'all, he's alive. Oh my goodness. So, he's in this little settlement. It's just got, a good little number of people. And, there's this guy, he wears this pendant around his neck. It's like a star. I'm not sure what that means. But anyway, so he's there and he's basically the leader of this little colony of people. And they just promote peace and happiness. They were building a tower and the hound was there helping chop wood and things, to help build the tower. And we find out that this guy actually found the hound. He was laying almost dead. He said he had a stench on him, like death was upon him, okay? And he had a broken leg and, he was beat up pretty bad, almost, near death. So the guy took him in and nursed him back to health. And, the hound is back to his normal self, but he's being a decent human being. You can tell that the hound is, even though people are scared of him, he's not being crazy to people. He seems like he's content, but he feels like he hasn't paid for all the wrongs that he's done. And, him and this guy, they kind of go back and forth. And come to find out, the guy that rescued him, he was kind of like the hound. There was a time in his life where he was out there thugging too. He was out there killing people based on an order someone gave him, that whole deal. So he wasn't perfect by any means. And so he and the hound kind of had this bond because they both had done things that they were ordered to do, and it was some grisly stuff, right? So one day while they're huddled around, having this talk, these guys roll up on them, and they're the men from the Brotherhood because they told them, the night is dark and full of terrors. So, that lets you know that they believe in the same thing that Melisandre believes in, the Lord of Light. And so the hound was telling him, look, we're going to have to fight them because they're not just going to leave us alone. Like they see that we here and we got women and we got food, we're doing pretty good for ourselves. They're going to come and try to raid us. And the old boy was like, I don't really know about all that, just kind of let it go. It'll blow over. And the hound was like, nah, they're going to come back. I'm trying to tell you, we're going to have to fight them. So the hound, he stays over there chopping wood. And old dude was like, look, just stay up here as long as you need to. I'm going to go ahead down here and make sure they fix you a plate. So when you get finished, doing your raging, you'll have something to eat. So y'all, when the hound got finished doing all his chopping, he probably was up there all night, right? Just chopping his life away because he was upset that old boy didn't want to fight. So he comes back down and the whole village is dead. And they even his homeboy, they strung him up and hung him. And so he picks up an axe, the hound, okay? He picks up an axe and he's gonna go get a little revenge. Okay, don't poke the hound. Y'all tried it. Okay, now he's coming for y'all. And this really ain't what y'all want. I'm curious if they're gonna let the hound and Arya meet again. And what that meeting would be like. Or him and Brienne. What would that look like exactly? Mm, I wanna see. Back at King's Landing, we have Marjorie who's talking to the High Sparrow. And he basically tells her, or he asked her, why aren't you sleeping with your husband? And she's like, well, I done been through so much that's not really on my agenda right now. I kind of been through something. I've had a spiritual awakening. A lot of things are going on with me. But she was like, but you know what? You right. He is my husband, and I do need to give him a piece. And so she went on about her business. But I was like, High Sparrow, who did Tommen confide in you and tell you that she wasn't giving him none? Like, oh, what kind of ew? And and he basically told her, like, you don't have to, like, you don't really have to be in the mood to do it. You just need to do it. Excuse me. He try. Ooh, that Sparrow. I'm telling you, honey, he is on my nerve. For real. So later in the episode, Marjorie sits down and talks with her grandmother, and her grandmother is still pleading with her, like, "Girl, what are you doing? Please snap out of this. This is not you. What about Loris? You know, your brother. You just gonna leave him in there and whatever." And Marjorie is still talking that stuff. She's like, Loris has to um, Loris has to atone for his sins, and she's just still babbling that stuff because oh girl, Scepter, whatever her name is, she was standing right there over Marjorie's shoulder, and her grandmama was like, "Look, I don't really know what's going on with you, but you really need to snap out of it." So Marjorie gets real close to her, and she gives her this piece of paper. See, before when Marjorie was talking to the High Sparrow, he made a lightweight threat on her grandmother's life. So she's basically trying to get her grandmother out of there. So later we find that the thing that Marjorie gave her was a picture of a rose. Now I don't know if that's their banner or something like that, but I think it was just trying to indicate that, look, I'm still in here, but I'm playing this Game of Thrones. Then later on, Cersei goes in to talk to the grandmother. And she basically is saying, we need to link our forces together and, try to beat this Sparrow dude. And grandmama, she's just not having it. She's like, you know what? I still remember that smirk on your face when they took Marjorie and Loris away. I still remember all the dirty backhand stuff that you did to me, chick. So, no, I'm not in a rush to jump up and try to help you. No, I'm really ready to see what all is going to happen. And hopefully you get, punched in the face too. Like, she don't have no sympathy for Cersei. She's not giving her any leeway. She's just like, look, you the one who brought the Sparrow here. So now you're going to have to deal with the consequences of what he brings. Sorry. And in a way, it's just, I don't know, it's like karma. And that's basically what she was telling her. Look, you created this, so you need to be the one to fix it. Don't be asking me to give up my. No, I'm not doing that because Marjorie is out. We still trying to get Loris, but Marjorie is out. So I really don't care what happens now. Basically, is what she was saying. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that she'll help if she needs to. But she's just making Cersei sweat. Jon and Sansa are still trying to rally up some of the houses of the north to join on their side to fight against Ramsay and his crew. And so the first place that they went to was House Mormont. And the lady of the house was a little girl named Lyanna, named after Lyanna Stark, and she's a little girl. So don't let the age fool you, okay? Because yeah, she a little girl, but she got a grown person mind. They came in there asking for help, and she was like, why would I do that? Like, you really got to give me a good reason because my sister and them, they rallied up behind Rob, and look what happened to them. They all got killed, so why would I give up my men to help y'all now? Get up out of here. I'm not doing that. And she even came for Sansa. She was like, I mean, ain't you a Lannister slash Bolton? Like, girl, you got all these last names. You ain't no Stark no more. It's like she was just really going in and she was really resistant against trying to help them. But then Davos stepped in and he kind of appealed to her. And it was a really nice moment because it was reminiscent of how he used to be with Cherie. And because she used to help him. She was teaching him how to read, and they just kind of had this bond. So it was very reminiscent of that. And he kind of talked to her and appealed to her, and that convinced her to give up 62 men. And she said that these 62 ain't just no regular 62 men. They are some of the best that she has. So they got her support. The next house they went to were the Glover house. Yeah, I think it was the Glover's house. And he was straight up like, nope. Where was Rob when the Ironborn came here and, killed my family and took everything that we had? And we had to fight for it back. Like, where was Rob then? He basically said his house pledged loyalty to the Starks, and in their time of need, the Starks didn't help them. So he basically just told them, look, I'm not gonna be able to do it. And he basically said, House Stark is dead. And I was like, oh, you mad, ain't you? Like, for real, he was really mad, okay? And then, y'all, at the end of it all, Rob and Sansa are having this conversation, and he's like, "Look, we just gonna have to fight with who we got. This is who we got. This is what we're gonna have to do." And she's just looking at him like, "We don't have enough people." So she sits down and writes a little letter. Now, I wonder who she writing that letter to. I already know. It's to Littlefinger. As much as she try to play like she hate him, she still trusts him to a certain extent. She knows that he knows how to play the game and he's slick. So she needs to keep him on the team. Now, Littlefinger likes Sansa. And at the end of the day, if she calls for Littlefinger's help, he gonna help her. So Jamie and Bronn, they are going to Blackfish's castle. And when they get there with their whole crew of soldiers, they see that the a couple of guys from the Frey house is there, and they have the hostage that they, introduced last week that they had, and they were basically threatening to kill him if Blackfish didn't surrender his castle to them. And Blackfish was like, "Well, go ahead, kill him then," and they didn't do it. So Jamie goes up and he basically takes over. And he's like, "Look, we need to have a perimeter set up. We need to surround this castle. So if we need to invade it, we can do it the right way." But see, Jamie doesn't want it to go that way. He wants a parlay. He wants to just say, "Look, let me just come take this castle over because, it belongs to the Freys anyway. And we cool with the Freys. And just let us come up in here and we won't kill all your men and all of that. Like, it won't be a slaughter." And Blackfish is just like, "I don't really care about all of that. I'm not surrendering. Y'all gonna have to take this castle." So he didn't back down. So Jamie's like, "Well, I guess we gonna have to fight." So Bron is looking like, "Man, here we go again." And they kind of have this moment. It was good to see them two back together, and Bron was like, "Look, what happened to my castle? You were supposed to make sure I got a castle, a wifey. Like, where's all this stuff you promised me, man? Come on. Ever since we got back from, overseas, I ain't got none of that stuff. You just been chilling." And I'm waiting on, what you said you gonna give me. So Bron is just like, "Man, come on." But Jamie's like, "Man, a Lannister always pays his debt." And before he could even get it out, he was like, "Man, I ain't trying to hear that. Just make sure you give me my stuff." So it was just a funny moment that they had. But that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to fight to get this castle back. And Jamie really didn't want to do it that way, but that's what it's going to come down to. There was a brief moment that they had with Theon and his sister. I guess they made a stop along the way. And they're there with all the, ladies of the night. Let's just give them a nice name. Okay. So they're there with them. And Theon's sister, she was partaking too. Okay, I didn't know that, but all right, girl, whatever you want to do, okay? But anywho, so Theon is just sitting there and it makes him extremely uncomfortable. He's all balled up and drawed up. And, the sister, she sends her little plaything away and told her, "Hey, I'll come back for you later." Yeesh. And and she has this one-on-one with Theon and she's like, "Look, I know that you've been through a lot. Everything is okay now. You can be who you are. Come on, man. It's me and you against the world. Like, we got to do this." And I think he was hearing her and he listened, and hopefully it's going to help him transition back, from Reek back to Theon. The last thing that we're going to talk about is Arya. So here she is, just basically skipping through town. Okay, she's really not skipping, but she's going through town and she meets these guys that are from Westeros, and she's like, "Look, I'm gonna need a ride back across the sea with you guys, and she threw some money in front of him. And he's like, all right, cool, we leaving in 2 days. And she threw some more money down. She was like, nah, we leaving tomorrow in the morning. Okay. And he was like, oh, okay. So she picked up her little money and was like, I'll see y'all in the morning. Real boss like, all right. And so then, as she's looking over this bridge, into the water, just gazing like she doesn't have a care in the world, this old lady walks up on her and starts talking to her. And all of a sudden, she stabs Arya and pushes her over the bridge into the water. Now, immediately, I'm screaming at the TV. Because, look, when the old lady walked up, I already knew what it was. Like, listen, this does not seem authentic to her character. Why would Arya just be walking around without her guard up? Why would she do that? She knew that she didn't kill old girl that she was supposed to kill. And what? Y'all want me to believe that her character just thought Jack and Hagar was just gonna let her just walk away free? Like, she owed them a body. She ain't gave them no body yet. So why would she think she could just go get Needle and dip out? Really? So her guard wasn't up when the old lady walked up to her. Honey, anybody could be one of these faceless men. And she know it. So why would she just be, I don't know, so carefree and not be paying attention? But anyway, so that happened, and she got stabbed and thrown over into the water. She didn't die, of course, but I was pissed. Like, I was really upset that that happened, and the hater, she pulled off her little mask as she was stabbing her and stuff to let her know, I'm the one doing this to you. And she walked away satisfied, like she really did something, like she really killed Arya. Girl, y'all, that made me so mad. I was very upset about that. No lie. So Arya obviously, like I said, isn't dead. She, came out of the water, but she's bleeding. Like she got stabbed up. Oh girl, like went ham on her. She stabbed her a lot. Okay, she stabbed her a lot to the point of, anybody with this many stab wounds is gonna die. You're gonna bleed out and die. So I don't know what's gonna happen next, but I know what they better not do. They better not let her die. Arya done been through too much. She done came too far to die. Don't do that. Don't do that. Game of Thrones, don't do that. I ain't playing. Now look, I don't know who gonna help Arya. Maybe old girl from that play might see her and take her in and nurse her back to health or something. I don't know, but she needs to get on that boat in the morning. Somebody need to help her real quick and in a hurry. Okay, don't do that. Y'all, that made me nervous. Game of Thrones, it always has me on my toes because even though I love a character, don't mean that they gonna live. So, anyway, so that was basically everything that happened in this episode of Game of Thrones. Whew, I'm ready for the next one already, y'all. I'm on pins and needles. I want to know what happens next. And so I will see you guys next week. Bye.